Et alors, mesdames et messieurs, je vous souhaite un grand bienvenue à cette édition française du programme Paroles pour emporter. Eh bien, sacrément, bienvenue à l'édition québécoise du YouTube show Lyrics to Go. Tabernacle hostie Christ Callis. Lyrics to Go. Well, hello and welcome to Lyrics to Go. I'm Daniel Maté, and this is my very first French language edition of Lyrics to Go. I will be speaking English, but I'll be sharing with you some French lyrics that I think are really exemplary of the traditions that they come from and just beautiful uses of that beautiful language. I have to say right off the bat that one of the things my parents did for me that gets the biggest thumbs up is sending me to French Immersion school starting in kindergarten, meaning that by age 6, 7, I was pretty much fluent in 2 languages. So as you can imagine, listening to lyrics in French was a big part of how I learned the language. I still remember the first French language album I ever owned. It was called C'est la récréation, or It's Recess. And the lead-off track was a real banger. It's called Luc va à l'école avec son chien Fido.
Va vite à l'école, va vite à l'école. Luc va à l'école avec son chien Fido. Luc va à l'école avec son chien Fido.
But even before that, my parents had a fairly international record collection, so I would sometimes hear French and other languages in my house growing up, so I was already sort of used to the sounds. So here's my game plan. I want to cover a bunch of different songs. I was hoping to stuff them all into one episode, but I actually have a lot to say about each one, or most of them. And some of the feedback I've gotten about the channel, other than this is the most amazing thing on the internet, is, you could stand to make your episodes a little bbit shorter. And I am nothing if not responsive to the people. So I'm going to start with one song in this episode, which is going to be a song from France by Jacques Brel. In the next episode, I'll cover a song written by a French songwriter, Anne Sylvestre, but performed in the version I love the most by a Québécois chanteuse, Pauline Julien. And then in number 3, I will cover a couple of Québécois songs by Gilles Vigneault and Robert Charlebois. I will also have a bonus episode in which I cover another French song and another one from Canada. And you can see that one and all my bonus episodes, as well as get all kinds of great perks like custom playlists and early access to episodes, a bunch of other stuff, by going to patreon.com/lyrics2go and becoming a subscriber. Merci beaucoup.
Enfant de carême, je l'aimerais là. Et j'aimerais que les enfants ne me regardent pas.
So I'm going to start off with a song by the absolute legend of French song, Jacques Brel. Now, actually, funny enough, Brel was not from France. He was Belgian, descended from people who spoke Flemish. So you can hear a particular kind of accent, especially in his R's and in his vowels when he sings. Now, actually, I first encountered Brel in a theatrical context. I had just moved to New York City to study musical theater writing at NYU. And there was a very well-reviewed musical that was on off-Broadway, called Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris, a revival of the celebrated 1968 show of the same name.
If we only have love to embrace without fears, we will kiss with our eyes, we will sleep without tears.
So I was really taken with this show. I thought it was beautiful. The acting, the singing was incredible. It was very tastefully done. I was really impressed with the translations, and this is without even knowing the originals, but the rhyming was great. It felt very organic. You could tell that it came from a different place and time, but still the translations were very skillfully done. And naturally, it made me want to go find out the source. So I started looking up Jacques Brel, and was just blown away by what I found. First of all, just his face, his figure, his expressions, and his expressiveness when he's performing. He's like a combination of a clown and a Shakespearean tragedian. I mean, he's just very compelling on stage. Now, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to this song and the next one I'll talk about. I want to start with the structure. There is something about French songwriting, maybe particularly of this era, but it could be a more general thing, that makes for incredible poetic architecture, let's say. There's just something architecturally magnificent about the way French songwriters, perhaps just of this era or more generally, put their songs together. And that's even before you look at the content or the delivery. These songs kind of make our verse chorus or AABA pop song forms look a bit simplistic. And that makes for an ability to tell stories in a very particular and nuanced way. And Jacques Brel really tells a story here extremely skillfully. So this song is split into 3 equal length stanzas, and each stanza is itself split into 3 unequal parts. And I'll call those 3 parts A, B, and C. Each A section is 4 lines long. They're pretty short lines, and the 4 lines have what's generally known as an A-B rhyme structure. But since we already used A, B, and C to number the different sections, we could call it an LM rhyme structure, or an ST. I mean, really, we're just naming one rhyming sound and another rhyming sound. One is on the 3rd and 1st lines in reverse order, and the second one is on the 2nd and 4th lines. It'll make sense as we go along. Now, musically, what's happening in these A sections, that's another important part of the form, because it informs what the mood is and kind of what emotional story is being told. So as you can hear, I'll play you the opening A section. It is rather slow. It's kind of out of time, what's known as con la voce, which means the voice is leading the tempo rather than the instruments being in a strict meter.
J'aimerais tenir l'enfant de Marie qui a fait graver sous ma statue. Il a vécu toute sa vie entre l'honneur et la vertu.
Okay, we'll pause there before we go on to the B section. Now, what's going on here in terms of the lyrics? Well, it starts with the line, J'aimerais tenir l'enfant de Marie qui a fait graver sous ma statue, which means I'd like to grab that son of Mary who inscribed or kind of either wrote or scratched underneath my statue, and then we'll find out what the person wrote. But one thing to note is that every single A section starts with something very, very similar. The only thing that changes actually is the epithet he uses to refer to this rascal who graffitied his statue with something. So in this case, it's Enfant de Marie, son of Mary. Second A section would be Enfant de Carême, which means son of Lent. And finally, in the 3rd A, he says Enfant de Salaud, which is just simply son of a bastard. Now, make a mental note of that one, because we're going to come back to his choice of phrasing there with Enfant de Salaud, son of a bastard. Okay, so that's the first 2 lines of each A. The second 2 lines of each A are all in quote marks, and these are verbatim whatever has been scrawled or inscribed or engraved underneath his statue. Now, by the way, if you haven't clued in, the statue is the one who's singing. We are listening to the thoughts of a dead person who is now immortalized in stone or bronze or marble or whatever it is, displayed prominently in some town square. And presumably, if there's a monument to him, if there's a statue, he must have done something laudable and worthy of commemoration. So you might think that this son of Mary he's shaking his immobile fist at would be someone who scrawled something disrespectful underneath his statue. But let's take a look at what the first inscription says. Il a vécu toute sa vie entre l'honneur et la vertu, which means, quote, he lived his entire life in between honor and virtue, end quote, which immediately creates quite a comic tension. Why would this man immortalized as a hero in a statue, want to grab and possibly do violence to this person who wrote something like that underneath his statue. Well, this is where the B section comes in. And in every case, the music picks up and it takes on two kind of qualities. One is sort of a martial rhythm. You can hear the snare going bum, 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 bum. And you can hear the, sort of warlike flute that you might hear in a marching band. But it also has a tone of mockery, particularly in the way he sings it. And it matches the words very well, because here's what he tells us who he really was.
Moi qui ai trompé mes amis du jour de l'an au jour de l'an. Moi qui ai trompé mes amis de faux serments en faux serments. Moi qui ai trompé mes maîtresses de sentiment en sentiment.
And then finally, moi qui ai trompé mes maîtresses du printemps jusqu'au printemps. Me who fooled my mistresses from springtime to springtime. So again, being a cad was a year-round thing for him. And that brings us to the end of the B section. So structurally, it's 4 couplets, and it's sort of 4 examples of his own malfeasance every time. We'll see that in the second and third Bs as well. And all the while, what he's doing, he's debunking and protesting these complimentary inscriptions that people have left in his memory, in his honor. And the C section is very brief. It's sort of a summation. He repeats whatever epithet he started with. Ah, cet enfant de Marie, je l'aimerais là. That son of Mary, I'd like to have him right here. I wish he was right here. Et j'aimerais que les enfants ne me regardent pas. And I really wish that all these kids would stop looking at me. So the comedy morphs slightly into something with a little more pathos. This is a man, a spirit, a statue full of shame. So now that we have that structure, let me play for you the entire second stanza, the second A, B, and C respectively, and then I'll come back and say a few things about it. But pay attention to what I said about the way each A, each B, and each C functions. And there will be translation on the screen along with the French paroles.
J'aimerais tenir l'enfant de carême qui a fait graver sous ma statue. Les dieux rappellent ceux qui les aiment, et c'était lui qui les aimait le plus. Moi qui n'ai jamais prié Dieu que lorsque j'avais mal aux dents. Moi qui n'ai jamais prié Dieu que quand j'ai eu peur de Satan. Moi qui n'ai prié Satan que lorsque j'étais amoureux. Moi qui n'ai prié Satan que quand j'ai eu peur du bon Dieu. Oh, cet enfant de carême, je l'aimerais là. Et j'aimerais que les enfants ne me regardent pas.
Okay, so a few things we can just point out that once again in the A section, the rhyme scheme is consistent. First and third, second and fourth lines rhyme. Here, the theme is a little bit different. It's not so much about his conduct or his character, but it's about his holiness, his piety. Because the inscription says, the gods recall, as in call back to them, those they love, and it was he they loved the most. So naturally, his protest, his debunking takes the form of talking about his spiritual life. And he basically says, look, I never prayed to God except, when I had a toothache or when I was scared of the devil. Oh, and I never prayed to the devil unless I was in love or unless I was afraid of God in heaven. In other words, I didn't even have a consistent deity that I prayed to. I just kind of went wherever the action was, wherever I thought I could get the best deal. And the C section is almost identical to the one that we saw in the first stanza, except the epithet changes. Cet enfant de carême, je l'aimerais là, et j'aimerais que les enfants ne me regardent pas. And that last line, I wish these kids would not look at me. It really hangs there with a lot of weight. And we kind of wonder, where is this going? And the third stanza answers that. Now, what's starting to emerge, and will be very clear by the time we get to the end of this lyric, is that, within each stanza, there's an arc, right? It goes from the A, kind of languid, to the B, a bit more upbeat and mocking, to the C, which kind of chills out again and gets, bitter. But there's also a larger arc to the entire song. We started with his personal life, then we looked at his spiritual life. Well, where's the third stanza going to take us? J'aimerais tenir l'enfant de salaud qui a fait graver sous ma statue. I'd like to grab that son of a bastard who wrote underneath my statue. And then the quotation is, il est mort comme un héros. Il est mort comme on ne meurt plus, which means he died like a hero. He died the way no one dies anymore. The implication being that he died a sort of a grand, noble, dignified death, the kind you don't usually see anymore. Well, he rips that one to shreds too. He says, moi qui suis parti faire la guerre parce que je m'ennuyais tellement. Me, who left to go to war, to make war, because I was so fucking bored, basically. I mean, there's no curse in there, but it's very emphatic. The next line's a little bit confusing if you take it literally. Moi qui suis parti faire la guerre pour voir si les femmes des Allemands. Literally, that means me who left to go to the war to see if the German wives. Not a complete sentence, but idiomatically, I'm guessing that it means me who left to go to the war to see about the German wives, to check them out, to see what was up with the wives of these Germans who were away at war themselves. And then to make matters worse, he moves from his ignoble motives to his ignoble cause of death. Moi qui suis mort à la guerre parce que les femmes des Allemands. You know what parce que means? It means because of. So, I died in the war because of the Germans' wives. It's left to our imagination as to whether he means I caught a very nasty venereal disease that took me down, or maybe I was discovered by a soldier on an unexpected furlough who came into his home there. Now, the people who translated this song for the off-Broadway show Jacques Brel is Alive and Well translated this line as me who went to the war to make it with the German broads, and then who died because of the German broads. So I suppose les femmes des Allemands could also mean just German women, in particular because femme means both woman and wife. But because of the phrasing, les femmes des Allemands, the women or wives of the Germans, that possessive sounds to me like it's implying that we're talking about specifically the wives of German soldiers. And finally, moi qui suis mort à la guerre de n'avoir pu faire autrement, which you could take to mean me who died in the war because I couldn't have done otherwise because I didn't have anything else to do. So that's the final B section, which leaves us 2 lines left, which constitute the C section. Well, we've already been through a number of twists and turns, but Jacques Brel always has one more in store, and he often delivers it on the very last line. In this case, he changes one letter, and it alters the meaning of the entire song. So he says,
je l'aimerais là. Et j'aimerais que mes enfants ne me regardent pas.
So if you have any basic French, you get that we've switched from les enfants to mes enfants, which changes the meaning into I wish that son of a bastard was here, and I wish that my kids would not look at me. I wish my kids would turn their faces away and stop looking at me. So who were his kids? I think the reasonable inference is he's talking about the bastards that he sired with these German wives who were the cause indirectly of his death. So really a tremendous piece of comic storytelling, and I think also social critique. In Jacques Brel's time, which was, he was writing these songs post-war, war memorials and monuments were, I assume, going up everywhere. And a lot of Brel's songs take the piss out of military patriotism and, war memorializing sentimentality. So really just a perfect lyric, incredibly constructed and magnificently executed. All right, that does it for part 1. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. À la prochaine. Ici Daniel Maté, disant, moi, j'ai des paroles pour emporter. Et maintenant, Vous les avez également. I think that's how you say it.
I'd like to grab that son of a bitch, the one who wrote on my statue. He died like a hero. He was a soldier, brave and true. Me who went off to the war because I was so damn bored. Me who went off to the war to make it with the German broads. Me who got killed in the war, making it with the German broads. Me who died during the war because I couldn't help it. That son of a bitch, I'd like to have him here. And all you kids, please, please, get out of here.